£9,000 a year or more is the going rate for a university degree in the UK. So over a 3-year degree, that's nearly 30 grand. Now, luckily, thanks to fee grants and the way the loan system works, I didn't end up actually paying that, but that's what they value it at. So what's the best lesson I took away from a degree that essentially costs £27,000? Now, I'll be honest here, I was actually planning on doing a really long video looking at loads of different lessons from university, kind of going through all my different modules and picking out what the best bits were from each of them. But the brutal truth is that so much of it was academic theory that I just don't think is as relevant as the stuff we already talk about on this channel. All the practical things like building a brand and social media. I think that stuff is more useful, to be honest. And so then I thought, well, rather than doing a whole video with loads of academic theories and all of that, what was the one most important takeaway I got from university? The one thing that really stuck with me, and that's what I want to share with you today. And just as a very quick side note here, I'm not knocking university when I say that. I had a great time, I'm glad I went. I just think in terms of the practicalities of building a business, there are more important things to talk about than the academic theories. But anyway, the topic that really stood out to me and the topic that kind of changed my mindset about business a little bit was pricing. And there are a few different points I want to bring up in this video that we can talk about that will hopefully kind of give you some different ideas as well. Now, the first concept that really fascinated me was the idea of a Veblen good. And all that means is a good that as the price increases, so does the demand. And this is a direct contradiction of the law of demand, which says that normally as the price increases, the demand is going to decrease. And obviously as the price lowers, the demand is going to raise as more people want it because it's a lower price. That makes sense, but a Veblen good contradicts that completely. And examples of this are almost always really luxurious products, things that demonstrate power and status. And so it's things like supercars, Swiss watches, all that kind of stuff. And the fact is, we have an evolutionary drive to want more of the things that we can't have. And so when you combine that with scarcity and a product that demonstrates social currency, well, that's a very powerful and interesting combination. Okay, but bear with me here, because the second point I want to make about pricing that's linked to that is that when it comes to positioning your business and your products in the marketplace, there are really two main strategies you can follow. You can either follow a strategy around cost, where you try to optimize the efficiency of the production process and cut costs to make your product or services as cheaply as possible so you can offer it at a low price to consumers. And obviously, when some consumers are deciding what to buy, they are specifically looking at the price. So if you can find a way to produce your products even more cheaply compared to competitors, you can make more profit on them than them on every sale, and you can win that way. The other option, though, is a strategy of differentiation, which is where instead of worrying about cost, you're worrying about, as the name suggests, being different, making your product unique and standing out. And so in this case, the things that you're more looking at is branding, marketing and advertising, and what features and benefits you can add to your product to make it better and completely unique. And so those are the two different ways really to win in business. You need to be following one of those two strategies. Now, all of this led me to a couple of important realizations about how I now approach business. And the first of those is that following a cost strategy is pretty much a race to the bottom. And what I mean by that, let's look at an example of two cafes. You've got two cafes who, by very unfortunate chance, are literally side by side, and so they're going to be competing for the same customers. But if they both choose to follow a price strategy, what's going to happen is one is going to lower their prices to say they can advertise that they're the cheapest cafe, but then that means the other cafe is going to have to retaliate. They're going to try and offer special discounts and lower their prices, and so then the other's going to try and cut costs somewhere, which maybe lowers the quality but allows them to charge even cheaper prices, and they just keep racing to the bottom, slashing their profits. Neither is really winning. Contrast that with a differentiation strategy, where instead they look to both have strong themes to their cafe, so they're competing for completely different markets there, but they really advertise their cafes in a way that builds their brand, and it's kind of a unique cafe that there's nothing else quite like it. Both of them are completely different, and so rather than competing on price, they're competing on different values, different uniqueness, unique selling points that the other just doesn't have. And so that, to me, just makes way more sense that you would try and compete that way. And I get that there is a need for some businesses that are going to operate on a cost strategy, but to me, the differentiation strategy just makes so much more sense to be focusing on building something of real quality rather than constantly just competing on price. The second epiphany was that obviously by following a differentiation strategy, that's how you get more loyal customers, because if your unique selling point is simply that you're the cheapest and that you've managed to find a way to cut the costs, as soon as another competitor comes along and finds a better way to optimize the production process and finds a way to lower their prices and underprice you and undercut you, well, then people aren't going to be loyal to you anymore. They're going to go where the new cheapest price is. So differentiation is how to win in the long term by building a brand of real value that draws people into it and become loyal to it. But the third and perhaps most important lesson from all of this was just the impact that human psychology has on your business strategy and how much you need to consider it. And so for me, all of this stuff about pricing, this Veblen goods concept, this idea of differentiating on quality, it just kind of sent me on the path of what kind of business I really want to create and what I think is just a vastly better business model to follow. And I suppose one of the reasons this lesson was really useful to me was simply because of the background I have. Because I grew up without having loads of money, I think that just meant that I always saw having low prices as being a good thing, and that to win in business you needed to find a way to be cheaper than the competitors who were offering something similar. But now I kind of realized that the best strategy really, in my opinion, would be not to be even worrying about what competitors are doing in their pricing, but focusing on making your product so different and your branding so different that price doesn't matter and people aren't looking at price because they're so invested in that specific brand of yours, that specific product of yours. Obviously though, when I say most useful lesson, that's hugely subjective, because the fact is, it's not normally a case that some information is better than others. It's just that some information resonates with some people more than others. Some people might find something ridiculously simple and obvious, but other people it completely changes their mindset and it changes their way of thinking. So that's why continual learning is so important, because we all just hear things now and again that completely change the way we look at something. And for me, this kind of did that a little bit. But hopefully I've given you a couple of little things just to think about here, such as the Veblen goods and how they contradict the law of demand, and how that ties to a differentiation strategy of focusing on the quality and the uniqueness of the branding rather than trying to race to the bottom when it comes to getting the cheapest prices. All this kind of stuff can perhaps just get you thinking about what kind of business you actually want to run and what business is going to be most profitable, what business is actually going to create the most value. So something to maybe think about. I hope it has been useful, and if you want even more videos like this, make sure you are subscribed and hit the bell icon, because I'm doing daily videos right now. So there is going to be loads of content related to business, self-development, growing your brand, especially in terms of YouTube and social media, which is going to be crucial if you do want to follow a differentiation strategy. So if all of that kind of stuff is of interest to you, make sure you hit the bell icon, and then you can go and check out some of these videos right here which are going to be directly related to that. Thanks for watching. Cheers.